Tonight we especially honor the Chumash and other Native Americans. Please welcome Chumash Elder Alan Spirit Hawk Salazar.
I'm going to start with the opening prayer. So if I can get everyone to stand up and all the gentlemen to please remove your hats. The Chumash, like many tribes in America and throughout the world, live by some very simple principles. I think the most important principle that the Chumash and the Tavian people live by is one of respect. To respect Mother Earth, all the plants, all the animals. And I acknowledge we were hunters and gatherers. So sometimes we had to sacrifice some miner's lettuce to survive. But when we did gather and hunt, we tried to take just what we needed. And acknowledging that we have to share not only with all of our neighbors and all the other people, but all the animals. The way we collected acorns is a good example of that. Acorn trees will drop their acorns twice. The first acorns that would drop, the Chumash would usually leave those for the animals, for the deer, the woodpeckers, the blue jays, the squirrels, all the animals that eat the acorns. And then the second dropping, those are the ones that we would take. The song I'm going to do for the opening blessing is a water thank you song. And I learned it from my dear friend Julie Tuamite and her father Vincent Tuamite, who's honored at the top of Mount Pinos, Iwahinmu. So, Yawa Howie, Yawa Howie, Yawa Howie, Osima. 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 I leave this offering to thank Mother Earth for everything that she gives us. And I ask the sky people, the Great Spirit, to bless all of us, to bless the playwrights, the storytellers, the singers, the dancers, to all of our guests, that everyone gets here safely and gets home safely. I ask that the sky people and the Great Spirit bless our soldiers and warriors and bring them home safely. To our leaders, that they lead us in a good way with a good heart. To our elders, that they take the lessons that they have learned from their elders and pass them on to the young people, and to those young people that they take those lessons and pass them on to the next generation and the next generation. To those that have passed, that are not here, that are looking down on us, to all of our ancestors that are looking down on us, we ask that they guide us and fill our hearts with patience and love and understanding. Kisa shwala, kisa kantush, kiyushka all, ki antikish, ki antikish, ki antikish. Thank you. You may all be seated now. I'm going to share a story. It's one of my favorite stories. I tell those of you that know me know I tell a lot of coyote stories because coyote stories are usually kind of humorous. And in the Chumash culture, coyote is not a true trickster. And I like that. To whereas in the Chumash culture, coyote is one of the sky people, the sky coyote. And we acknowledge that coyote is very intelligent, very clever, survives by his wits, but he's also coyote. He will say or do whatever it takes to survive, To put them in modern day terms, I tell people a coyote has a little Justin Bieber in him and a little George W. Bush in him. He's a little bit full of himself. But like I said, in the Chumash culture, we acknowledge them for their intelligence and their bravery. And lots of times it's coyote that's sent to save someone when they're lost. But this story is not a Chumash story. It's kind of a universal Native American story, probably from the Plains tribes, because it has buffalo in it. But it's the story of Coyote and the Boulder. And the reason I'm sharing this story today, it goes with that theme of what I just said about respect. That not only do we believe, it's one of the things that caused the problems when the European people came, that we believed that all the animals had a spirit. And even the ones we hunted, we would say prayers and give thanks to them for giving their life so we could survive. And when the Spanish brought the horses over, we acknowledged that horse had a spirit. And the bond between the tribes that became horsemen was much different and much closer than the Spanish and European people. And our methods of training horses was much different. We did not feel you had to beat the horse and make him subservient, because we respected their spirit. And even the rocks and the trees have spirits. And this story is one of those stories that gives that example. One day, Coyote and his friend Fox were going to go for a walk. They drove up to the Chula Vista parking lot and thought they'd hike all the way to the top of the mountain. They hiked up the dirt road, and it was about noon, and they saw a big boulder. And they thought they would sit and rest for a while before they continued their journey up to the top of the mountain. And Coyote asked the boulder, he goes, "May we sit and rest on you for a while?" And the boulder said, "Sure, sit down and rest." So Coyote and Fox sat down and rest. They caught their breath, visited for a little while. Then as the day was going on, they decided that they better get going if they wanted to make it to the top of the mountain. But before they left, Coyote had a blanket, and he folded it up very neatly, and he gave it to the boulder as a gift and thanked him. And then Coyote and Fox continued their journey up the mountain. Now it's springtime, and as Fox and Coyote started getting up closer to the top of the mountain, it started to get windy, the clouds started to move in, then it started to rain, and they were getting wet, and there was no shelter, and they were just up there where there's not a lot of trees up towards the top, and they were getting all wet. It's not me. If it's someone more important, though, I'll take it. No. I've always wanted to do that in the program. Take my phone, have someone call me and go, "I'm sorry, this is a bigger name, I got to take it." And they were getting wet and they were getting cold. There was no shelter. And Coyote told Fox, he goes, "Hey, go back down the mountain and ask the boulder if we can borrow the blanket while it's raining." So the fox did. He went back down the mountain, found the boulder, and he goes, "Hey, can we borrow the blanket? We'll give it back to you when we're done." The boulder goes, "No. Coyote gave me the blanket. It's mine." Fox goes, "Okay." He goes back up the mountain. He finds Coyote. He's all wet and cold and shivering. And Coyote goes, "Where's the blanket?" Fox goes, "Hey, the boulder won't give it back. He says it's his now, and he won't let us borrow it." He says, "Come on, you probably didn't explain it well enough." So both Coyote and Fox go back down the mountain. Coyote goes up the boulder. He goes, "Hey, look, we just want to borrow the blanket while it's raining. We're going to cover up, get warm and dry. When it stops raining, we're going to give you the blanket back. We just want to borrow it." The boulder goes, "No. You gave me the blanket, now it's mine." Well, Coyote looks around, he figures, what can a boulder do? And he grabs the blanket and he takes off running down the mountain, thinking he'll run a little ways, find a big tree, cover up underneath the tree with a blanket, him and Fox, and they'll be nice and warm and dry. All of a sudden, he hears a loud thud, crash, boom, and rolling down the mountain, winding his blanket back is that boulder. Fox figures he'll outsmart him, so he darts in front of him this way and that way, back and forth. Fox is trying to trick him, and the boulder just keeps rolling straight after Coyote. He rolls over the fox's tail, and Fox goes yelping and crying. Now Coyote's by himself. He's running as fast as he can with the blanket, but the boulder's getting closer and closer to him. He's rolling faster than Coyote can run. When Coyote sees a big old grizzly bear, 7 feet tall, 600 pounds, and he goes to the bear, he goes, "Bear, can you stop this boulder? It's trying to roll over me and kill me and take my blanket away." And the bear, he looks at the boulder, he goes, "Oh yeah, I can stop that." He goes up the boulder, he puts his big paws around the boulder, and the boulder rolls right over the bear, flattens him out, keeps on rolling after Coyote. Now Coyote's really scared when he sees a whole herd of buffalo down in this meadow. And he runs up to the buffalo, he goes, "Hey, can you guys stop this boulder? It's trying to roll over me and kill me and take my blanket away." And the buffalo, they look at the boulder, they go, "Oh yeah, we can stop that." They paw the dirt and they lower their heads and they all charge the boulder. The boulder rolls over all the buffalo. Eyeballs are flying over that way, and tongues and guts and intestines and spleens, appendixes. Do buffalo have appendixes? I don't know. Anyway, now Coyote's really scared because the bear couldn't stop the boulder. The buffalo, who are big and strong, they couldn't stop the boulder. When he sees the river, and he figures, I'll swim across the river, because he knows when you throw a rock in the water, it sinks to the bottom. And Coyote swims across the river. He's standing on the other side, and he's watching the boulder. The boulder rolls up to the river, rolls into the water, and floats across the river. He goes, "Oh, man, this must be some kind of magical boulder. I'm getting tired." And he remembers there on the other side of the river, there's a little hut. And in the hut, there's 2 sisters. And those sisters were very smart. And Coyote yells out to his 2 sisters. He goes, "Help, help, can you stop this boulder? It's trying to roll over me and kill me and take my blanket away." The 2 sisters, they open up the little deerskin flap of their door and they look at the boulder. They go, "Oh yeah, we can stop that." The 2 sisters come out each with big hammer stones like this. And one sister gets on one side of the boulder and the other sister gets on the other side of the boulder. And they start hitting that boulder as hard, as fast as they can. Pretty soon a little pebble flies off and a little flake flies off. And before you know it, they take this giant boulder and smash it into a million little pebbles that go flying all over. Now Coyote's very thankful. He's trying to catch his breath because he ran a long way, so he can thank the 2 sisters. And while he's trying to catch his breath, he overhears the 2 sisters talking about how fat and plump and delicious looking Coyote is. And he knows what they're up to, that they're planning on having him for dinner, and not as a guest, but as an entree. Entree is a Chumash word that means you guys never should have gave me 20 minutes. You have no one to regret but yourself. No one to blame but yourself, Joe. Well, while the 2 sisters are arguing over whose turn it is to start the fire that night, Coyote goes over to the water pitcher. Use your imagination. Here's a water pitcher. And he drinks all their water, then sets it back down and goes over to the 2 sisters who are still arguing over whose turn it is to start the fire. And one sister says, "It's your turn to start the fire. I started it last night." The other sister says, "Oh, no. It's your turn to start the fire. I started it the other night." Coyote goes, "Excuse me." The 2 sisters go, "What?" They were smart, but they didn't have much of personalities. I think I married one of them. There's some Paso Robles in 2000. No, anyway. He goes, "Hey, look, I just want to thank you for saving my life. I mean, the bear couldn't stop the boulder. The whole herd of buffalo couldn't. He floated across water. My friend Fox couldn't trick him. And I just want to thank you. But I was wondering, you wouldn't happen to have a drink of water? I'm really thirsty." They go, "Yeah, we got a pitcher right there." Coyote goes over to the pitcher and he picks it up and he goes, "It's empty." Well, the 2 sisters start arguing again. The one sister says, "It's your turn to fill it up. I filled it up yesterday." The other sister says, "Oh, no. It's your turn to fill it up. I filled it up yesterday." Coyote once again goes, "Excuse me, how about if I take the water pitcher and go back to the river and fill it up for all of us?" The 2 sisters go, groovy, because they were from the 60s. Coyote picks up the water pitcher, trots off towards the river. When he gets a couple hundred yards away, he throws the water pitcher, takes off running with his blanket, and he got away from the two sisters. They were so mad and angry with each other, they stayed up all night arguing and fighting. They didn't even go to sleep that night. And I tell that story at a lot of schools with young kids because, to me, it's a perfect example of the difference between storytelling from Native Americans and storytelling from European myth and legend. Many European myth and legend, and many of the first European settlers when they came over, they dealt strictly with morals, right versus wrong, good versus evil. What's the moral of the story? The moral of that story? You shouldn't argue with your sister. Shouldn't argue with your brothers. The lesson of the story from a Native American point of view is coyote is coyote. As I said earlier, he will do and say whatever it takes to survive. He wasn't completely honest about whose the blanket belonged to when he was asking for help, and that's just the way Coyote is. He'll be up for re-election in 2014. And we'll all have an opportunity to 86's sorry butt out, but who are you going to replace him with? I was supposed to look at someone for 5 minutes, but how close am I? How am I doing? I'm doing good? Next year for the storytelling, I'll tell another coyote story. But I had a friend the other day on Facebook ask a question. Does anyone know where Armona is? Does anyone here know where Armona, California is? I don't see any hands. Armona is a very small town. It's about 35 or so miles south of Fresno, about 12 miles west of Hanford, California. And he asked because he went to Armona and had some really good linguiça. And I wrote on there that I grew up in Hanford, California as a young boy from 1953 to 1963. And on my mom's side, my mom was mostly Portuguese. And Hanford is a Portuguese, and Hanford, Lemoore, Armona, that area, it's a Portuguese dairy farming community area. And that's where I grew up as a young boy. So I grew up eating linguiça. And it was one of those stories that reminds us that nothing happens as an accident. Everything has a reason. Even when you have an accident, the reason is you need to pay attention. But I wrote all this stuff. I go, Hanford is Portuguese dairy farming community, has the world's best ice cream at Superior Dairy, downtown Hanford. And I grew up there as a young boy. My friend who I went to high school with in Bakersfield writes back, he goes, "Is your mom's name Teresa, and do you have an Aunt Clara?" Now, he wasn't that good of a friend, so he wouldn't have known what my mother's name was, and he definitely wouldn't have known that I had an Aunt Clara from Hanford, California, because I just knew him from Bakersfield and Foothill High. And long story short, his girlfriend is from Hanford, California. And she worked with my mom, who passed away in 1990, and went to her funeral service. And she knew me from that. So we're going to have lunch and reminisce about Hanford, which is a wonderful town. It was a great place to grow up. And I'll close with, I grew up with Tiny, the world's greatest dog. Now, as a shoemaster Taviam, I knew I should have had an animal like Hawk. My older brother and sister, like many older brothers and sisters, would tell me that I was adopted. Actually, and I wasn't adopted. My pop and mom found me in the woods, and I was raised by wolves as a little boy. Little did they know that even at a little age, 3 and 4, that hit a chord with me. And when we moved to San Fernando to Hanford, my dad got a dog, Tiny, the world's greatest dog. And I'll probably go, for the next year, I'll go back and forth. Do I want to tell a coyote story next year or Tiny, the world's greatest dog? And this is how I'm going to tell my Tiny, the world's greatest dog stories. I know almost all of you probably have had a really good dog, either now or when you were growing up. But Tiny was truly the world's greatest dog. And I'll give you one story of how he got that title. Tiny was part Scottish Terrier and part Black Lab. So he was only about that tall, had little short legs, little fat body. And Tiny was an outdoor dog. He didn't sleep in the house, he slept outdoors because he was a guard dog. His job was to guard us and protect us. And that's what he did. We had chickens, ducks, horses, cows, and Tiny. And Tiny slept in a bed, a box about that big, with blankets right by the front door of the house. We had 2 acres. The horses were in the back, the chickens and ducks were to the side. Now, I won a baby duck at the fair one year, and he was this little golden, just fluffy feather, just the cutest little thing you can ever imagine. And I named him Donald because I'm from that era. Not Donald Rumsfeld era, but Donald Duck era. And Donald grew into a nice, big, healthy, white duck. And at least I didn't change Donald's name when Donald started laying eggs. Her name was Donald. Now, being a little boy when you're like 5 or 6, and I haven't outgrown this stage, I still do this. It's probably why I'm single. But when you're a little boy and you wake up in the middle of the night and you have to go to the bathroom, it's just easier to go out the kitchen door and go over by the big cottonwood tree there in your yard and take a whiz. Can I say whiz? Because if I'm not supposed to say whiz, I won't say whiz. I don't think kids, probably young kids, don't even know what that. They're thinking it's a soda pop of some kind. And in the country, if there's any country folk here, especially dairy farms and farmers, the cats out in the country, at least in Hanford, were really mean. And you wanted them to be mean so they would eat mice. And they would keep the mice population down, and the mice wouldn't get in the grain. So they didn't feed the cats. They were all kind of like half feral and half the house, your cat. And I saw a cat that was around our house stalk and kill a jackrabbit one time. They were really mean. And as I woke up in the middle of the night and go, God, I got to go to the bathroom. Well, I don't want to go in the bathroom, flush the toilet, and wake up mom and dad. I'll just go out by the cottonwood tree. And I go out by the cottonwood tree, and it's a beautiful night. And, when you're a little boy, it takes you like about 3 seconds to take a whiz. And I'll get into what happens when men are over 50 later in the next talk. And it hit me. Where does Donald sleep? Because Donald didn't sleep in the pen with all the other chickens and duck. Donald was special, and she had a run of the whole place. And I'm out there in the middle of the night, and I'm like, why don't the cats, and we had coyotes and all kinds of things out there, how does Donald survive? I wonder where she sleeps. And I'm looking around for Donald. I figure maybe she's over by the chicken pen over there, somewhere, and I don't see her. And I walk around the front, and there's Tiny in his box asleep. On top of Tiny was Donald. So not only did Tiny share his bed with Donald, he let her sleep on top of him, and he protected her the way he protected us. And that was just one of the stories that made Tiny the world's greatest dog. I want to thank you. I hope you enjoyed the stories. The audience at the Ridge Route Museum last weekend, I mean, they were throwing spit wads, they were spitting and biting. This is a much better, well-behaved audience. So give yourself a round of applause for being well-behaved tonight. Thank you. Enjoy the weekend. This is truly a great event. And Joe, it's all yours.